This guide will cover everything you need to know to win in Mario Kart World. Starting from picking a good character and vehicle combo, basic driving controls, all the way to the incredible, flashy, itemless shortcuts, and how to use strategy to win against your friends, win online, and win against the best players in the world. But first, let's make one thing clear. Mario Kart is not a luck-based game. If you think that, I don't blame you. Mario Kart is crazy. Items are completely random. They're luck-based, and you've probably been caught in the vortex of unplayable madness. This does not have to be you. Instead, this can be you. You can be better and dominate your competitors. But that's not you. That's me. But it could be you. Once you see past the chaos, you will see structure, strategy, and a game that is 5% luck, 95% skill, and 100% a blast to play for both beginners and pros. So let's get started. If you just started playing Mario Kart World, you may have been picking whatever looks good or maximizing the speed stats to try to win. But because this is a Nintendo game, things are never as they seem. So let's clear up which stats are actually important. The best combo in the game for beginners is any character with a low weight stat, such as Baby Daisy, driving the Mach Rocket. And both of these are already unlocked when you start playing the game for the first time. And you can press the Y button to see your stats. What we're going for here is a high acceleration stat and handling stat. Acceleration is how quickly you can get back to full speed after stopping, which is very important after getting hit by an item. Handling controls how well you can turn, whether it's basic steering left and right or drifting. High handling also makes it possible to take lots of precise shortcuts where you need to turn sharply, and we'll talk about this more later in the guide. Now, you may have noticed your speed stat is very low, so how are you supposed to win? Well, this combo has 3 hidden stats that will help you win. First, the Mach Rocket has a hidden ground speed bonus that makes it actually above average on ground surfaces, which is most surfaces. It also secretly has a high mini turbo stat, which affects how long certain speed boosts last for. And also, this is going to sound crazy, but having a low weight stat means you get a bigger speed boost when you have more coins. If that sounds ridiculous, don't worry, it is true, and we're not going to get into it right now. Why are these stats hidden? I don't know. Thanks, Nintendo. In the future, I will make a guide on how to pick a good combo, but for now, just know that lightweights are the best, and not just for beginners. At the time of making this video, the most popular combo used by pro Mario Kart players is this exact combo. Well, a reskin of that combo, but it has the same stats. And if you'd like, you can swap out for other lightweights, or switch your vehicle to the Rob Hog or Baby Blooper, as these are just as good. For now, my advice is do not go for a high-speed combo. Not only is it probably going to be worse, you will have a much harder time improving at this game. Now, heavyweights are viable, and you absolutely can win with them, but I would not recommend it for now if you are trying to learn the game and improve. While you have the character select screen open, you'll want to press X to change your settings. Make sure you turn smart steering off, auto accelerate off, auto item use off, and tilt controls off. Smart steering helps you stay on the track without falling, but it can move you unpredictably and prevent you from taking shortcuts. It's good for total beginners, but not if you're trying to improve. Auto accelerate just holds A for you, but there are times where you will want to slow down on purpose, so it's better to turn this off. Auto item use is not a good idea because, of course, learning how to plan and use your items is one of the most crucial skills to master in Mario Kart. And finally, tilt controls allows you to physically tilt the controller left and right to steer, which is obviously not useful. So just turn all of these off as you will not be needing them for high-level play. You might think you know how this game works if you've played previous Mario Kart games, but Mario Kart World introduces some insane brand new mechanics. And not just that, but there are also significant changes to familiar mechanics. So even if you are a veteran Mario Kart player who's played all the previous games, you need to watch this section, or you will not know what you are doing. The basic controls in this game are very simple. Hold the A button to go forward and the B button to slow down or reverse. At the start of the race, you can get what's called a start boost. During the countdown, do not press A. Wait until the second light turns on and then press and hold A. If you do this correctly, you will get the maximum length start boost. Now, if you miss the timing and start holding A2 late, you will get a shorter start boost, which is not bad, but what you want to avoid is holding A2 early. If this happens, you will get a burnout. That's really bad, so if you think you might have held A too early, you can quickly let go of A for a split second, then hold it again. Then you will probably get an okay start boost. Now, if you are playing a track with a rolling start, where you are already moving during the countdown, then it is impossible to burn out. If you hold A too early here, you will just get no start boost at all. As you drive the track, hold the A button to go forward and use the left control stick to move left and right. You do not need to hold forward to go forward. Usually it is clear where the main road is and you'll want to stay on the main road as much as you can. Falling off of the main road takes you out of bounds and you will get picked up. If this happens, press and hold A right before you touch the ground and you will get a respawn boost. If you see patches of grass or rough terrain next to the main road, these are usually off-road, which is a surface that slows you down significantly, and you'll know you're in the off-road if you see your tires suddenly get bigger. You generally want to avoid off-road, however, there are some items, such as the mushroom, where you can use it to drive through the off-road at full speed, and this is how you'll take shortcuts. At the top left, you can see your item, and you can get up to 2 items by going through item boxes on the track. Press the L or ZL button to activate your first item. Once you finish using the first item, the second item will move over. Now, there are a lot of different items in the game, all with different effects. And what item you get from an item box is random, but racers that are farther behind will get better items. We'll talk more about items later as they are extremely important for winning a race. When driving around a turn, hold the direction you want to go and hold the R or ZR button. This begins a drift, which lets you turn sharper. Once you begin your drift, then you can switch between holding left and right to control your direction. If you drift for long enough, sparks will build up under your tires. Once this happens, you can release R to end your drift and get a speed boost called a mini turbo. By holding the drift for longer, the sparks will upgrade from blue to orange to rainbow, which each represent a mini turbo boost that will last longer. I refer to these by color, but they are also called mini turbo, super mini turbo, and ultra mini turbo. You want to get in the habit of drifting around most turns in this game, as it helps you turn sharper and gives you a speed boost. And especially for the sharp turns, it's best to start your drift much earlier than the beginning of the turn, and this will help you turn sharply through it. You can press the X button to look backwards. In order to use this effectively, make sure you find a comfortable way to continue holding the A button while being able to tap X. Now, this is not something you'll need until you're really good, so don't worry about pressing X if you're just starting. Pressing and holding the down direction on the D-pad allows you to rewind. Of course, you can only use this in single-player mode, but it's incredibly useful for practicing shortcuts. If you plan to get good at Mario Kart World, this is a button you'll be using a lot, so I recommend remapping it to a more comfortable location on your controller, such as a shoulder button or a button on the back of the controller if you're using the Pro Controller 2. The R or ZR button is also used to perform tricks. Anytime you go off a ramp, you can press R near the edge to do a trick, which gives you a speed boost after you land. Not everything that you can trick on will be immediately obvious, so be ready to trick anytime you think something will send you into the air. Another way that you can trick is by shaking the controller, even if you have motion controls turned off. Just one flick of the controller is enough, and this can be helpful for some difficult tricks. However, do not rely on shake tricks, as it's usually less consistent than just pressing R. Unlike in previous Mario Kart games, you can now trick anytime you are in the air. This also gives you a speed boost when you land, but it will be a shorter boost than if you had tricked on the ground. But the main benefit of air tricks is to help you move. You can already move around slightly in the air, but adding left or right tricks will help to push you even farther in that direction, which helps with alignment and with shortcuts. You can also trick when you touch a blue glider panel, and driving over this turns your vehicle into a glider. In a glider, you can still move left and right, but you can also move up and down. You need to hold down to go up and hold up to go down. If that sounds weird, think about it like you're leaning back or leaning forward. Positioning yourself while gliding is very slow and restricted, but thankfully you can hold a direction while pressing R to trick, to push yourself in a direction very quickly. This is especially important for trying to hit boost rings or dodge items. Other than ground and gliding, there's one other main driving surface, and that is water. While on water, your vehicle turns into a boat and controls very differently. The main difference is that turning and drifting become much more difficult as your turning action is delayed compared to what you're used to. You might find yourself often not turning sharp enough and then suddenly turning too sharp when you try to correct it. Just keep in mind that your turning will happen, it just happens a bit later than expected. And as long as you notice this and try to account for it, water controls are not too bad. The other difference is that you can trick anytime you bounce in the water. This can be when you land from a jump or when the water has intense waves. Some tracks naturally have wavy water, but even an item like a bomb or a blue shell can create these waves for you to trick on. Now here's where we get into the brand new mechanics of Mario Kart World. This is a rail. All you have to do is drive onto it with enough speed and you will attach. If you just keep holding A, you will drive the entire length of the rail with no other controls necessary. The main thing you need to know about rails is that at any time you can press R to trick and get a speed boost. However, if you hold left or right on the control stick as you trick, then you will do a trick in that direction. This can help you attach to other rails or help you take shortcuts due to the powerful speed of side tricks. Driving on a rail is usually faster than driving on the ground and often requires very precise trick timings to stay on the rail. However, rails are easily trapped with items, and attack items follow the rails, making them often unsafe. So choosing whether or not to go on a rail is an important decision to make during a race. For now, this is all you really need to know about moving on rails. But since this is a new mechanic to Mario Kart World, I will go over some extra details about how rails work. Like drifting, staying on a rail causes you to naturally charge up mini turbo sparks from blue to orange to rainbow. When you do a trick, this will give you the mini turbo boost that you have charged up. You can also trick right away with no sparks, and this gives you the same boost as if you had charged up to blue sparks. Most of the time on rails, charging up these sparks is not important, as you can just repeatedly do tricks to go faster. And there is one more thing to know about rails, which is that tricking at the very end of the rail works differently than tricking anywhere else on the rail. If you trick at the very end, you will get a longer trick boost, which is a good thing, but you have less control over your movement in the air, and side tricks don't work the same at all, making this usually a worse option. So in general, avoid tricking at the very end of the rail. The final basic movement technique is the charge jump. Once you're driving with enough speed, press and hold the R or ZR button while keeping your control stick in the neutral position. This begins a charge jump. Once the sparks build up to blue, you can release the R button to jump. As you release, you can hold the control stick in neutral, left or right to control the direction of the charge jump. Now, while the charge jump does give you a speed boost after you land, the charging phase and the airtime are both slow, meaning that repeatedly doing charge jumps is actually slower than just driving straight. So the main purpose of a charge jump is not to get a speed boost, but it is to jump to places that you otherwise could not reach. For example, you can use a charge jump to get onto a rail that is high up, or you can use a charge jump to clear a large gap to take a shortcut, or you can use a charge jump to reach a high area of the track that you otherwise could not reach, or you can use it to drive on walls. Now let's talk about some more specific controls and movement mechanics that you need to know, and keep in mind, you can get away with not knowing these as a beginner. So if you're just starting out with the game and everything I've said so far is overwhelming, that's completely normal. Don't worry, you will get it with practice. Just learn everything I've already talked about because those are necessary to play this game. And you can definitely ignore this next section for now by skipping to the next timestamp in the description. But once you have a good grasp on the controls, let's talk about advanced movement. Wall riding is not absolutely necessary to learn to be able to play Mario Kart World, but if you don't learn it, then you are missing out on a huge portion of where you can explore on the tracks, leading to very fun and important shortcuts. So let's talk about how wall riding works. Now, you cannot simply drive onto a wall. The only way to drive on a wall is to first do a trick before landing on the wall. And this can be anything that gives you a trick animation, whether it's tricking from a ramp to the wall, from a rail to the wall, by doing a charge jump, or by using the feather item. Now, this next part might surprise you, but once you are on the wall, you have no control over your direction. The direction that you move is actually determined by your angle towards the wall as you approach it. For example, if you stay very parallel with the wall, then you will drive low on the wall, which is good for reducing airtime. If you angle sharply at the wall, then you will drive high up, which is good if you want to access a higher area of the track. And just like rails, driving on a wall will automatically charge up sparks under your tires, except wall charging is way faster. And at any time, you can trick off the wall. Because of this, you often want to wait for the sparks to turn orange before tricking off to get a longer trick boost. Now, before you suggest we wall ride the left side of the Airship Fortress Spiral, you cannot ride a convex wall. The wall has to be at least flat, or you will detach off of it immediately. In fact, flat walls will automatically detach you after a short period of time. Concave walls let you drive on them for much longer, and this is pretty much the only time you will see rainbow sparks on a wall. However, long concave walls are quite rare. Knowing which walls are useful to drive on, when to trick off of them, or when to just detach from them intentionally is all very specific and depends on what shortcuts are allowed by the track layout. All of the clips I've shown in this section are extremely useful examples of driving on walls. Wall riding is not easy, it takes a lot of practice, but learning each one makes learning the next one easier. Now let's talk about trickable objects. Mario Kart World's environment has a ton of trickable objects, usually taking the form of a pole. Just like how you need to trick to ride a wall, you need to trick before touching a pole in midair in order to get a pole trick. But unlike most tricks, you do not need to hit the R button to trick. Simply touching the pole will automatically do the trick for you. A pole trick launches you forward and gives more height, allowing for a lot more cool shortcuts where you otherwise would not expect to see one. And pretty much any thin object usually counts as a pole that you can trick on. For example, trees. Most trees, as long as they're not too thick, are poles. Even sideways trees are poles. And even though it's not vertical, this ring is a pole. You cannot even ignore poles that are just out in the middle of nowhere, because somehow this will create a shortcut. Even the finish line might be a pole. And again, every example shown here is a real and important shortcut in Mario Kart World. Unexpected track elements that prove to be crucial is part of the beauty of this game, and I hope you're excited to learn all of these shortcuts. Now, before we end this section about the controls, I do want to say a few more things that are sometimes useful. If there is a sharp turn, slowing down can be helpful. While drifting, you can press or tap the B button to slow down, and this is called brake drifting. But if you slow down too much, you will stop drifting entirely, so make sure you use this sparingly. If you are not moving, you can hold A and B at the same time to help you turn quickly. This has almost no use in regular races and is more just to help you out in free roam or while setting up to practice shortcuts. And finally, you can use the right side control stick on your controller to move the camera, and this serves two functions. One is that you can look around, especially to the side where you otherwise cannot see, and another use is that you can throw items in the direction of the camera. This can be used for sneaky and unexpected snipes without having to drive in a different direction. Now, if you plan to use this a lot, I recommend remapping A to an additional other button on your controller, such as a shoulder button or a button on the back of the controller. This way, anytime you want to use the camera, you can switch to accelerating with a different finger while your right thumb moves the camera. Camera snipes are not crucial to learn, but they are fun and they are useful sometimes. So that's it for the controls and movement mechanics in Mario Kart World. As you learn new shortcuts and techniques, especially with rails and walls, if you ever get confused, come back to this section, as I have covered all the important details about how they work. At any time, if you want a quick refresher on the controls, then you can go to the bottom of the main screen and go to Manual. Now, these are not very detailed, but it does tell you all of the things that you can do. For example, jump boost or tricks, they don't even mention air tricks. And you can get on a rail, but they don't tell you how to get off of a rail. So while this does exist and can help, it's not really the best resource. But at least they did mention that the mushroom is tasty. Thanks, Nintendo! Alright, now that we've learned the controls and mechanics, let's start racing. Mario Kart races are incredibly complex, as there can be up to 24 players in total, lots of crazy items and different paths you can take, resulting in a lot of important decisions to be made during the race. and this is before we even talk about doing shortcuts and having precise driving skills. So how should you get started? You definitely want to keep things simple at first. Anytime there is a turn, try to take the turn tightly to go faster. The path you take throughout the track is called a racing line, and having a good line can make you go much faster than a bad line. But of course, taking a tighter line can be dangerous. You risk driving into the off-road or out of bounds if you're not careful, and you risk getting hit by other players who are taking the same optimal line. So you need to go for a balance of good lines to go fast and safe lines to avoid getting hit. And sometimes it's important to move off of the best line in order to get resources. In Mario Kart World, there are two types of resources: coins and items. When you collect coins, your coin counter at the bottom left will increase. You can hold up to 20 coins at once, and each coin increases your top speed. At 20 coins, you will move 5% faster compared to 0 coins, which may not sound like much, but this small difference adds up. Over a 2-minute race, that's about 6 seconds faster with 20 coins, which is often more than the difference between first and last place. However, this doesn't mean you should always try to reach 20 coins, because going out of your way for them is slow. Thankfully, making coin decisions is not actually that complex. You might think that each coin gives you the same speed increase, but this is actually not true. The first few coins and the last few coins matter way more, because Nintendo designed the coin boost not as a straight line, but as a curve. For example, the speed increase you get going from 0 to 1 coin is way more than the speed boost you get going from 13 to 14 coins. Because of this, a good rule of thumb is to try and get to around 5 to 8 coins early on, and then stop prioritizing coins after that point. Of course, having more coins is always better, but it's often not worth it to go out of your way for them if you already have a few. The other resource in Mario Kart is items. You get these by touching an item box on the track, and most item boxes are single boxes, but sometimes an item set has a double item box, which gives you 2 items at once. These are very valuable, but they're usually placed on a worse line, requiring you to take a longer path. Just keep in mind that the closer you are to first place, the worse your items will be, so maybe you don't need a double box. But if you are near last place, then getting the double box is very important, as you will get 2 amazing items. In a later section, we will go in depth about what each item does, but for now, what you need to know is that you can group items into 2 main categories: speed items and attack items. Speed items include the Star, Bullet Bill, Mega Mushroom, Golden Mushroom, and the most common speed item, which is the Mushroom, or Triple Mushrooms. Speed items are the best items you can get, as you can use them to catch up, you can use them to break away from the pack, take shortcuts, and also to re-accelerate after being hit. If you have a speed item, what you should usually do is hold onto it and use it to take a shortcut. Some shortcuts are just an obvious patch of grass, but this is where track knowledge is very important, because some shortcuts are not so obvious, and knowing about them can give you a big advantage. And keep in mind that some shortcuts may require more speed items than just a single mushroom to be able to take. Consistently taking the best shortcuts is one of the most important keys to winning a race in Mario Kart. Attack items are generally not as strong as speed items. This is because attacking another player only helps you pass that player, but if you use a speed item, you gain time against every other player at once. But there is one exception: the lightning or shock. This is an attack item and it is the best item. But that's because it hits everyone in front of you at once and slows them down, which, if you think about it, basically makes it a speed item. Now, because attack items are generally not as strong, you usually want to get rid of attack items before the next item set so you have a chance to get something better. However, all attack items can be used as defense, with some being better than others. For example, triple bananas or triple shells can block incoming attacks, and the super horn can just wipe out everyone and all projectiles around you to prevent them from hitting you first. So especially if you are in a top position where mushrooms are more rare, holding onto a good defense item is also a smart play. And also, first place cannot get mushrooms from item boxes, so you definitely want a good defense item in first place. A very strong strategy in Mario Kart is chaining items. This is where you hold onto an item all the way until the next item box set, then get rid of it there. Now, why would you want to chain items instead of just using the items as soon as you get them? The reason chaining items is powerful is because you still get to use up all your items for your own benefit, but you spend less time being itemless and therefore defenseless. When you chain items, as soon as your defense is gone, you have already replaced it with more. Now, this doesn't mean you should always chain items, as there's often a good reason to use your item sooner, or just don't even use the item because you want to save it for later for a shortcut. But if you don't need the items you have, then chaining them is usually better than using them right away. When racing with other players, there are a few more things to keep in mind. If you stay right behind another player for a few seconds, you will get a speed boost called a draft. This is an incredibly powerful boost and is crucial for breaking away from the pack or just gaining positions without using up your limited items. And this is especially important at the start of the race as everyone is close by and easier to draft. When you play with other racers, getting bumped can also be really bad, especially if you get bumped off the track, since you will also lose your items. So whenever you choose to take a line close to the edge of the road, always be aware of your surroundings. Even if you think you're safe, somebody could always speed up with a draft or with a mushroom and bump you or hit you off. You must try to anticipate these bumps and actively steer against them before the bump even happens, because once the bump happens, it's too late. As long as you steer against bumps before they happen, then bumps will never be too bad, even with a low weight stat. In general, in Mario Kart World, you also want to stay out of the middle of the road. Unless there's some good reason why you need to be there right now, it's better to just always avoid the middle, and this is because of items that move down the middle of the track, specifically the coin shell and the blue shell. This is so common in Mario Kart World that, let's just say, if you ever get hit by one of these two items moving down the middle of the track, it's probably your own fault. Just don't be there. Now, the end of the race is especially crucial as everyone is getting rid of their items and they've finished catching up, so getting hit at the end is the most deadly spot in the entire race. At the end of the race, it is so important to think about how safe you are, and if there is any danger at all, you should do everything you can to avoid that. You don't want to play a great race just to mess it all up with one mistake at the finish line, because you will get passed, and you will get passed by a lot of players. I'm sure we've all been there before. Now, these are just the basics, things you should be thinking about all the time as you race. In a later section of this guide, I will give even more high-level tips on how to win more. We'll talk in depth about rails, walls, shortcuts, item planning, and the best strategy to use depending on your position in the race and how late it is into the race, and what to do about certain powerful items like the shock and the blue shell, and how to better avoid getting hit by all the chaotic items. And in addition to this, I have been making video guides on different tracks and shortcuts, and I will be continuing to make these. You can just search for a track guide on the YouTube search bar, and there's a good chance I've made a guide for that track. While it is mostly these broad, useful concepts that will get you far, knowing the specifics of each track is also incredibly important, especially for tracks like Bowser's Castle, where not knowing the beginning shortcuts pretty much guarantees that you lose the race. On tracks like Cheap Cheap Falls, where no matter how well you're dodging items in first place, you're not really winning unless you've set yourself up to take the shortcuts on lap 3. Or tracks like Shy Guy Bazaar, which are the opposite. You need to take a lead early or you're not going to make a comeback. Mario Kart is not just fun because it's a racing game. What elevates this game above all else is that it is also a complex strategy game, and each track is a completely different battlefield. But perhaps the most important tip I have for you in this video is this. The number one thing that will make you a better Mario Kart player is memorizing the track layouts. When you play against good players, no amount of game sense or quick reaction time or creativity is going to make up for falling off the track once a race, or taking a turn too wide by mistake and someone catches up and hits you. If you know the track layout and you can drive it confidently without making mistakes, and you know where all the big shortcuts are located so you know when to use your mushrooms, then you are already at a huge advantage against most people that play Mario Kart. And I'm mainly talking about the 30 tracks in this game. Well, there are only 30 at the time of making this video. Hopefully DLC comes out soon, but in reality, there are over 200 tracks if you count going from one track to another. However, these are a lot easier to drive, they have a lot of overlap with each other, and they all end in one of the 30 tracks anyway. So just by knowing the 30 tracks, you will always be able to end the race strong. If you still don't remember which way to go on a track, practice playing the tracks in versus mode or time trials, and I guarantee you that you will have them all memorized with just a few weeks of casual play. Once you have the track layout memorized and you always know where to go, this frees up your brain for other crucial skills, like thinking about your items, positioning yourself among other racers, and looking backwards. But until then, memorize the tracks. There are 6 main game modes in Mario Kart World, and we'll quickly talk about what you get in each one. Grand Prix is pretty much Mario Kart's classic mode, where you play through 4 tracks at a time against computer players, but this time with a twist. In Mario Kart World, you can drive from one track to another. So what happens is, on the very first race, you play the normal version of the first track, and then on every subsequent race, you race from one track to the next, followed by just one lap of the resulting track. Afterwards, you will unlock a character and get a trophy and star rating for how well you performed. Through the Grand Prix mode, you get to really see the size of the world and how all these tracks connect to one another. However, you will not get a lot of practice and repetition for each track because you're mostly driving between tracks. I think everyone should start with Grand Prix mode and aim to eventually get a gold trophy in each cup as a badge of your skill in this game, and also just to unlock everything. But eventually, I recommend playing other game modes instead. Time Trials is exclusive to single player. In this mode, you get 3 mushrooms and you race against the clock to complete a track as fast as possible. Once you complete a race, if it's your best time, you can save it as a ghost, and then you can even race against that ghost to try and improve. You can even download ghosts from online to race against your friend's best time or race against the top 10 in the world, including the world record time trial. Don't do this unless you really want to know how bad you are at the game. But you don't have to use time trials to try and set records, since it's great as just a practice environment where you can rewind or restart anytime you'd like. Although personally, I don't think time trials is necessarily the best practice mode, which I will talk about more soon. Another cool thing about time trials is you can go download and watch a ghost to see what strategies they are using, then learn and implement those in your own races. But keep in mind that some strategies you see the time trial world records do are incredibly difficult and inconsistent. So not everything you learn here will be applicable in versus races. On this channel, I make short videos and long videos that are guides on how to do important shortcuts, and I always mention how consistent a shortcut is with practice. Some techniques are far too precise to be consistent for humans to be doing every single race, which is why I recommend learning the tracks from watching these guides or watching videos of high-level online races, whether from me or from other Mario Kart pros. The time trial world records are really cool, but you can't always tell just how hard something is supposed to be. Versus mode allows you to play regular races with a custom rule set, and this is mostly what you'll be using to race against friends offline. You can also set the speed, which I recommend to set at the default 150cc, but if the game feels too fast, you can lower it to 100cc or even 50cc. After setting the rules, you can pick any track in the game, not just one of the main 30 tracks, but also any of the intermission tracks, where you race from one track to another. There are over 200 of these, most of which are only accessible through versus mode. Okay, they're not technically called intermission tracks, but that is the community accepted term at this point. And the reason is pretty silly. If you want, you can call them highways, routes, or connectors, and everyone will still understand you. A really cool thing about versus mode is that you can turn off computer players and set the items to mushrooms only. This puts you in a race with just yourself, always in first place, and you might be wondering, what's the point of this? Well, this is actually my favorite way to practice shortcuts in Mario Kart. I mostly like to race against real players online, that is where I care about my skills, so versus mode is a way I can practice in the most similar environment. There are item boxes on the track, I have an unlimited supply of mushrooms to keep redoing shortcuts, and the coins actually respawn when you rewind, and yes, some precise shortcuts actually require a coin to still be present on the track. And there's actually a lot more you can do with Versus Mode. You can set custom items to any item you would like to practice with, and this could be for feather shortcuts, you could be taking specific combinations of shortcuts with a Mega Mushroom or a Golden Mushroom, or you can even practice this shortcut with green shells only. You can also pause to restart a race or quickly go to the next race to practice a different track, and overall, this just gives you a lot more different and effective ways to practice than in time trials. Now, of course, time trials are valuable. If you want to set your best time or compare your driving against a ghost, then time trials is the only place to do this. This is important practice, but mainly for optimization. If you are learning shortcuts and techniques for the first time, or you want to get as many repetitions with them as you can, especially with the huge variety of different items that you may want to use, then Versus Mode is definitely the way to go for most of your practice. Another thing you can do with Versus Mode is set the computer players on and turn on custom items. If you set the items to only the coin shell and coin block, then you can get a whole bunch of coins dropping on the track, and this makes it a lot faster to unlock vehicles. You can also set the items to Kamek only, and this makes it faster to unlock characters. This only applies to unlocking enemy characters, which are the ones that Kamek can transform you into, and certain characters can only be unlocked on certain tracks. Knockout Tour is brand new to Mario Kart World, and is a very different format compared to regular races. There are currently 8 different rallies, a rally meaning a long track layout to race on, and Knockout Tour always begins with 24 players, and you race up to the next checkpoint. At each checkpoint, the bottom 4 racers get eliminated, reducing the player count over and over until there are just 4 racers left as you finally reach the destination track. Then the final lap determines the winner. This is a very long endurance race where you make aggressive plays to eliminate others and try to avoid being at the bottom at all costs. The concept of Knockout Tour honestly sounds like way more fun than regular races, but there are some downsides. If you play with real players, then getting eliminated early means you have to wait for the race to finish before you can play again. And the track layouts are mostly simple straight lines with slight turns, which can be less interesting to drive on. However, this makes it easier to hit other players, which is perfect for the type of gameplay in Knockout Tour. Now, because a lot of Knockout Tour does not have sharp turns, and you're often going to be at 20 coins, so the whole weird thing about the weight stat doesn't even matter, the best combo to use in Knockout Tour is not necessarily going to be these super lightweights. In my experience, combos that have a better balance of speed and acceleration work better in Knockout Tour. You can even get away with having a very high amount of speed, and you may not even have to use your acceleration stat that much. And you can build a big lead to the point where when you reach the final track, because there are so few players, the chances of items hitting you like the shock and the blue shell are actually very low, and you mainly just worry about red shells. So the gameplay is a lot more peaceful by that point, and you can definitely get away with having lower acceleration. This is just my experience in Knockout Tour. I'm not amazing at Knockout Tour since it's not the main way that I play this game, but that's just something to keep in mind where Knockout Tour is different than regular races. Battle mode will not be covered in this video. As of right now, there are only 2 game modes, Balloon Battle and Coin Runners, and they're more about hitting other players or reaching a specific objective, and they're not races. It's fun for sure, but it's not what most people play in Mario Kart, and I am not an expert in these. And finally, free roam. When you're at the main menu screen, you'll see a character just driving around the Mario Kart world. Press the plus button to take over, and this enters the free roam mode. Once you're here, you can explore the entire world, and there's lots to do. You can grab food bags to unlock character costumes, you can get in a UFO to kidnap, unlock new characters. You can press the minus button to take cute photos. If you press Y, you can open up the map to go to any track and also see how many P-Switch missions you have completed, question mark panels you have found, and Peach medallions you have obtained. Question mark panels are mostly just hidden around the world, but Peach medallions are a challenge to collect, with them often being in strange places that you need to figure out how to reach. P-switches send you into a mission, some being easy and some being extremely difficult, with the goal of teaching you some basic game mechanics. There are a lot of secrets in the world, so go out exploring. Before we move on to more advanced strategy and decision making, we need to talk about how the item system works and what every item does, so you know what you're dealing with and what options you have at any given moment. Item boxes are laid around the track in groups called item sets, and most tracks will have 3 item sets per lap. Typically, the first item set only has single boxes, and every other set has at least one double item box. When you have 2 items, you cannot swap the order of these items, you have to use the items in order. You have to use the first item and then the second item. After touching an item box, there is a short cooldown, about half a second, before you are allowed to grab another item box. So this means if you grab 2 single boxes at once, you will still only get 1 item. But if there is more time in between touching these boxes, then you can get 2 items. Regardless, it's a good idea to always try and aim for 2 different item boxes at once as you drive through the item sets. That way it's less likely you can get your item stolen by another player who grabs it first. Remember, there are 24 players, you can't always tell when somebody's about to take a box before you do. So better be safe than sorry. After you get your item, the item roulette will spin, and it takes a while before you actually get your item. But there is a way to get it faster. You should listen to the roulette sound, and after the sound plays twice, you can press L or ZL to get your item faster. And just to show you what I mean, here is an example. And this is rare, but if you get 2 items at 2 separate boxes, pressing L at this time will only give you your first item, because the second one is not done rolling, and so it spins for the full duration. To prevent this, press L after the second item roulette spins twice, and you will get both at once. This can be extremely important in some situations, mainly the beginning of Sky High Sunday, so you know if you get a mushroom to be able to take this shortcut. When racing, you can always see your first item held behind your vehicle. Certain items like the banana are actually physically behind you, meaning that other racers can run into it and it can block red shells. But most items are not actually placed behind you. You can see it there, but other players cannot. The only items that you can see another player holding are the ones that you can run into on your own screen. So just because somebody doesn't look like they have an item doesn't mean they don't have a super horn, or a star, or a boomerang, and they can still hit you with it. Because of this, it's often important to give space to other players when possible, or try to hit them before they can whip out their secret item and hit you first. Now, generally how items work is that the further back you are, the better items you will get. This is mostly based on your placement from 1st to 24th, with 1st getting the worst items and 24th getting the best items. But it's also partially based on your distance to 1st place. So if 1st place is very far away, you can get good items even if your placement is high. Now, you might think that this system is cheap, and that the point of such an item system is to allow less skilled players to still have a chance to win. But this is not true. Remember, items make up part of the core identity of Mario Kart, and knowing how to use the item system to your advantage is a fundamental skill. If all you can do is drive fast, but your item play is bad, and everyone passes you with their items at the end, then you're not losing because the game is unfair. You're losing because you're not good at Mario Kart. Most players will use their items to benefit themselves, but it's the great player who knows exactly when is the best spot to use this item for maximum benefit. This is how the item system almost always benefits the more skilled player. So no, items are not the reason why you lost. A great player can front run and build a massive lead so that there is no item that can make them lose. But when they get unlucky and sent to the bottom, a great player knows how to use those items and still find a way back to 1st place. So now let's talk about what each item does. There are a lot of items, and even if you think you know what the items do, I still recommend watching this section as you will probably learn something new about one of the items. Of course, item strategy goes from basic all the way to infinitely complex, and this is just the beginner guide. We will eventually dive much deeper into items in the pro guide. Let's start off with the attack items. Some attack items are strong, but in general, the attack items are not nearly as useful as the other items in Mario Kart World, especially with there being 24 players. I mean, attack items are collectively quite strong when 23 other players are trying to hit you, but actually having an attack item is not that great compared to speed items. You can become a great player and totally get away with not knowing all the details about the attack items, but it's still good to know. The banana or banana peel is an attack item and defense item. If it is in your first item slot, it will automatically trail behind your vehicle, and this is true for many items. The banana behind you can hit other players, protect you against attacks from behind, and most importantly, protect you against red shells. Pressing L makes you place the banana behind you by default, but if you press forward on the stick, it will throw the banana forward. The banana is the only permanent trap item that you can place on the track, so place it where it's hard to avoid. It's often best placed right in front of a double item box, which allows you to chain items, or on a rail, which makes them incredibly difficult to avoid. The green shell also trails behind you automatically, so it functions the same way as a banana defensively. But if you throw it forwards or backwards, it moves in a straight line and can bounce several times on walls before breaking. But what's even more powerful is if you throw it on a rail, since it will follow that rail, which is very important for making snipes both forwards and backwards. The red shell is just like a green shell, but with two differences. When thrown forward, it targets the player in front of you and tries to hit them. This makes red shells extremely powerful as it forces players in front of you to keep their defensive items or risk getting a sure hit. When thrown backwards, red shells move in a straight line just like green shells, but they cannot bounce on walls as hitting anything causes them to break. This is why red shells should typically be thrown forward. Red shells move very fast, and if someone is close behind you and throws a red shell, it is often impossible for a human to react to this in time. Because of this, it is very important to frequently look backwards for red shells, and if you see one, make sure you're ready for it, or preemptively put your trail item in the first slot so that you can block it automatically. When a red shell is coming for you, it will show you a warning at the bottom of the screen, and the red shell has a distinct sound that you can hear. Because you have to react to red shells so quickly, if there are no other threats around you, get your finger ready on the L button to protect against red shells and watch and listen for the warning. Because if you don't react quite fast enough, it can be disastrous. Now for all three of these items, the banana, green shell, and red shell, there is a triple version of this item. This is a great defensive item as it forces players to stay away from you and blocks attacks from all directions. And it is also a great offensive item as you can crash into other players to take them out. However, because they don't trail behind you, it's harder to block red shells with them. In order to block a red shell, you will need to throw the shell backwards. And this is by holding down on the left stick while you press L. But the red shell may not be directly behind you, so you will also want to look backwards as you throw the item back at the red shell. This can be very difficult, especially because red shells do not give you much time to react. The bomb, or bomb, is a trail item that can also block red shells, and also an item that you can place behind you or throw forward, just like the banana. When a bomb is on the ground, you have to be very close for it to explode, so just stay away. But it also explodes after several seconds, so make sure you pay attention to if it's about to explode. Now, even if you think it shouldn't explode, somebody else or some other item could hit the bomb, so you often want to stay outside of its blast radius just to stay safe. Dropping a bomb behind you is very powerful, especially if there are multiple racers behind you, as they are more likely to run into it and the explosion can take them all out at once. You can also make bomb snipes forward, but this is a lot more difficult. The blue shell is an item that you can throw forward and it moves down the middle of the track, hitting any player that it runs into. For this reason, you should pretty much always stay out of the middle of the road. Then, once it reaches first place, it delivers a deadly hit with massive stun, lasting far longer than the stun from any other item. The blue shell is usually not a very strong item to have, but it is an important item to watch out for. After the blue shell is obtained by any player, there is a 30-second cooldown before another blue shell can be obtained, so it's often not safe to be in first place unless you have an item that protects you against the blue shell, or a blue shell has already been thrown recently. The existence of the blue shell greatly affects racing strategy, and is something you should frequently be thinking about as you race, and the more players there are, the more likely a blue shell will get pulled at some point in the race. In my experience, in 12-player races, which is how I play competitive Mario Kart, there are typically 1 or 0 blue shells in a race. But with 24 players, it feels like an average of about 2 blue shells per race. Now, there is counterplay to blue shells, as even without an item, you can jump off the track in first, and because of the respawn boost, this is much faster than being hit by a blue shell. But the best counterplay to blue shells in 24-player races is just to not be in first place, unless you have an item to protect you against it, like a super horn or a mushroom. The super horn is a very powerful item for a few reasons. When you use it, it has a lasting hitbox all around you that blocks every single projectile item and hits any racer nearby that is not invincible. The super horn can be used to break any item, including the blue shell, which makes it a very powerful item to have in first place. The super horn also cannot be stolen by a boo, which gives a strong advantage to anyone in first with a super horn. And remember, since this item does not actually trail behind you, it is invisible to all other players. You can use this as a guaranteed surprise hit on players around you to keep yourself safe. The Fire Flower and Ice Flower are essentially reskins of the same item. You can throw up to 8 fireballs or ice balls, and they're similar to green shells in that they move in a straight line and can bounce. After one throw, the timer will count down and eventually run out, making you lose the item. Now, of course, you can also throw these backwards to block red shells, but for any item that you have to throw to block a red shell, just keep this in mind. If you're in the air, it is sometimes impossible to block a red shell without a trail item, because when you try to toss the item backwards, the red shell might be aiming for your head. But don't get angry like I did when that happened to me. That's just unlucky, and you can use this knowledge to your advantage and throw red shells in a way that is hard for someone to block, even if they should be able to block it in theory. The boomerang is a really obnoxious item. It can be thrown forwards or backwards, and it has a hitbox as it moves away from you and as it moves back to you. And it slightly curves on its own to try and hit other players. And it can bounce on walls. And it can break through any item to hit the opponent, except for a super horn. And to make matters worse, it can be thrown 4 times, and on the final throw, the boomerang just keeps going and doesn't come back, but you bet it will bounce on walls and curve to target other players extremely far away. When a boomerang gets pulled, there's no skill involved. Somebody is getting hit. And if you thought that was all, it gets worse. Not only is the boomerang nearly guaranteed to hit everyone around you, often you don't even want this thing, because you have to use up all 4 throws to get rid of it or wait for the timer to run out. And if you have another item you want to get to, sorry, you have to wait. And somehow it gets even worse. The boo cannot steal a boomerang. So you're really, truly stuck with this thing until you finish using it. Now, there are times when you will want to use a boomerang, especially to block a red shell, so a good strategy when you get the boomerang is to just use one throw of it and let the timer run down. Unlike the Fire or Ice Flower, once it runs out of time, it will still stay in your inventory until you use the final throw. So if you get to another item set by that point, you can still easily chain items. And because a boomerang cannot be stolen, it's actually a decent item to have in first at the end of the race, as it can protect you against up to 4 red shells. Now, if you do need to quickly get rid of a boomerang, there are a few ways. You can repeatedly throw it against a wall, which helps you get rid of it faster, or you can throw it against someone in an invincibility item, such as a star, mega mushroom, or bullet bill. This breaks the boomerang instantly. The hammer is one of the most powerful attack items. It can be thrown forwards or backwards 4 times, it has a massive hitbox, and the hitbox lingers on the ground afterwards, making it incredibly difficult to avoid. There are some situations where your only realistic option to hit another player is if you had hammers. Another cool thing you can do with hammers is to throw them forward on an upward ramp, and they will land extremely close to you, catching other players with the ground hitbox with no time to react. The main downside to hammers, however, is that they cannot be used to block red shells, so you usually want to get rid of them quickly. The Kamek is a very rare item, and it can be powerful, but it's usually not. It really depends. When you use Kamek, he flies down the track and transforms anyone near his flight path into an enemy character. If you get transformed by the Kamek into a character you have not unlocked yet, then you will unlock the character. Some characters require specific areas to be unlocked. For example, you can unlock Rocky Wrench on Airship Fortress or Conch Door on Faraway Oasis. While being transformed, you cannot drift. This is a very strange effect, and it's usually not a big deal, but sometimes it can be absolutely race-ending. For example, in the spiral section of Airship Fortress, you have to hold a drift to take a good line. Getting hit by anything here, including Kamek just ending your drift, is disastrous, and this is true for any sharp turn. When you get hit by a Kamek, you have about 1 to 2 seconds before you can start drifting again. So don't panic and just wait that amount of time before you start your next drift. This will help you manage the damage from ending your drift a lot better. In addition to ending your drift, Kamek will spawn enemies in a certain area. Kamek is such a party game item that usually does nothing, but sometimes does something completely unfair. And I love it. The blooper is probably the rarest item you can get, and it just sprays ink onto the screen of everyone in front of you. Now, for beginner players, this can be a big hindrance, as you can no longer see the track. But experienced players don't really need to see the track to drive that well, so it's really no big deal. Oh, and if you use a blooper in first place, nothing happens. Like, this item literally does nothing. Thanks, Nintendo. And finally, we have the best attack item by far, arguably the #1 best item in the game, the lightning, or as experienced players call it, the shock. I could make a whole video about the strategy for using the shock and the strategy for dodging the shock, as the shock has devastating effects on the race. When used, the shock hits every player in front of you, brings them to a stop, makes them small and slow and squishable by regular-sized players for a period of time, and removes their items. If that sounds overpowered, it absolutely is. And keep in mind that there's a big difference between this shock and shock from previous games. In previous Mario Kart games, the shock hits every other player at once, but in Mario Kart World, the shock only hits players in front of the shock user, so often you can dodge a shock just by being in last place. You can only get the shock if you're very close to last place, and it is a very rare item to get. But if you get the shock, you can often just use the shock to win the race, or at least guarantee a very high placement. But this is only if you use it well. So for now, I'll give you a very quick rule of thumb for when to use the shock. Use the shock at the item set before a big shortcut. Just remember that, and you'll usually make the best play. Okay, so now let's break that down. Why use the shock at an item set? Well, when you use the shock, you are slowing everyone down and you're going to pass them. So if you pass a bunch of players, then grab an item box, you will be in a higher spot, which means you get a worse item. But if you chain the shock into an item set, then you will get 2 great items, except you also just use the shock. So you get the full benefit of 3 great items at once. And why use it at the item set before a shortcut? Well, that's to stop everyone else from taking the shortcut since you just removed their items, while you are guaranteed to take the shortcut thanks to your 2 good items. This creates a massive time save relative to your opponents that is often enough to outright win the race if you do it on the final lap. Now, of course, this means that there are certain spots on certain tracks that are considered the best shock spots. And with this information, you should be able to figure out some of them. For example, where's the best shock spot on Dino Jungle? The best shock spot is at the bridge item set because there's the massive grass shortcut afterwards. What about on Cheep Falls? The best shock spot is at the waterfall item set because there are 2 big shortcuts afterwards. Now, knowing this also means that if you have an item that can dodge the shock, which is the Star, Bullet, Boo, or Mega Mushroom, especially on lap 3, you should try to use it at the best shock spot. Not just because shock is common here, but also because you know how devastating it would be to lose your items here, since you can no longer take the shortcuts. So, better to protect your items here than anywhere else. This does mean you open yourself up to getting shocked at a different spot, but remember, that's not as bad. Usually if that happens, you can still get items and make a comeback anyway. Another important thing to note about the shock is that the shock makes players drop their items onto the ground. While this can benefit you sometimes, like by picking up a star or mushrooms, you also have to watch out for bananas and shells, as they will be everywhere. Anytime a shock is obtained by any player, there is a 30-second cooldown before the next shock can be obtained by somebody else. This means that it is possible for there to be multiple shocks in one race, however, it is actually quite rare. So this creates situations where if you still haven't seen a shock by lap 3, then you want to play as if there will be a shock at the best shock spot. But if a shock already has happened earlier in the race, you can usually safely assume there will be no shock for the rest of the race and you don't have to worry about dodging it. Next up, let's look at the speed items. Speed items are typically better than attack items as you can use them to take shortcuts, and these are also the items that lend themselves to long-term planning. The mushroom is the simplest speed item. When you use the mushroom, you go faster for a short period of time. You can use the mushroom to re-accelerate after being hit, you can use it to get away from a dangerous attack item, and you can use it to take shortcuts. With most off-road shortcuts on a turn, you'll want to drift and use the mushroom, then release a mini turbo at the end of it. Now, some shortcuts are just a little too big for one mushroom, but you can get creative to take these shortcuts anyway. Especially on intermission tracks, you'll often find rocks in the ground, or you can do a charge jump to jump out of the rest of the off-road. You can even take advantage of trickable poles to gain a lot more distance by using a charge jump with the mushroom and hitting the pole. And this can help you clear shortcuts that should typically be too big for one mushroom. And also very importantly, you can use a mushroom to dodge a blue shell. When a blue shell is circling above you, wait for it to stop moving. Now you can use your mushroom and you will dodge the blue shell. It's quite a forgiving timing and it feels really nice to do. The golden mushroom is an unlimited mushroom that you can spam for over 7 seconds, being equivalent to using about 5 mushrooms in a row. This is a very powerful item for making comebacks, as you can often use it to take multiple shortcuts, and especially on intermission tracks, you will find shortcuts that are so large that you actually need a golden mushroom to be able to make it all the way through. This one leading up to Wario Shipyard might just be the biggest shortcut on any intermission track, and probably the single biggest shortcut in the entire game. One downside to the golden mushroom is that you cannot get rid of it right away, as it has to stay in your item slot for its entire duration. Because of this, it's important to learn golden mushroom spots, or in other words, where to use a golden mushroom so that it runs out before the next item set, while still getting you through the important shortcut. Triple mushrooms is one of the best items in the game, and whether or not triple mushrooms are better than the golden mushroom is a hotly debated topic among casual Mario Kart fans. But every single pro player knows that the triple mushroom item is incredibly overpowered, while the golden mushroom is just pretty good. But why is that? Shouldn't the item that is equivalent to 5 mushrooms be better than 3 mushrooms? Well, no, and it's because you can use triple mushrooms whenever you want. Once you use a golden mushroom, it's done. You're now in a higher position where you probably won't get items that are quite as good. But with triple mushrooms, you can use them one at a time in shortcuts that are an entire lap apart from each other and gradually make a gigantic comeback while still holding an overpowered item in your second slot. This strategy is called item smuggling, where you take a powerful item from a bottom spot to a top spot, and there are pretty much only 3 ways to accomplish this. Be way better than everyone else you're racing against, or get an early shock dodge, or just use triple mushrooms, one of the most common items. So while this item may be weaker in terms of raw speed, you will typically get a much bigger overall time save from using triple mushrooms compared to the golden mushroom. So use these mushrooms wisely. The star is not too much of a speed item, as it doesn't make you go that much faster, but it does make you invincible for a long period of time, and you can trample other players while in a star. You can also use a star to take shortcuts as you move at full speed through the off-road. But perhaps the most broken thing that a star can do is it leaves your item slot when you use it. This means that if you chain a star into an item set, you essentially have 3 good items at the same time. You can use the star to take shortcuts, but you don't even have a star. You have 2 other great items, and the star is the one taking shortcuts. It's the star of the show. This is why chaining a star is such a powerful play, especially right before a shortcut. Now, when using a star, make sure to listen to the music, as it always ends on a particular note, so you know when you're about to lose your invincibility. The Mega Mushroom is like a star, but better in every way except for one. It makes you really large, invincible, able to squish other players, which is a deadly attack, and it gives you a huge speed boost that is much faster than a star, and it lasts just as long as a star. Also, it cannot be stolen by the Boo. From this, you may think that the Mega Mushroom is just better, but unfortunately, it lacks one crucial element of the star, which is that it stays in your item slot when you use it, making you unable to chain this item like you could in Mario Kart Wii. If after all this you still think the Mega Mushroom is better, just wait until a moment where you have a horrible item trapped behind a Mega Mushroom and think about what could have been if you just had a star instead, and you can chain all of this at the next item set. The Bullet Bill, also known as the Bullet, or Bill, is the fastest item in the game. It's also fully invincible, it drives for you, and you can still steer it slightly to try and bump other racers and grab coins and take tighter lines, and it cannot end on a sharp turn, turning some parts of some tracks into what's called a bullet extension zone, where the bullets can often last up to 14 seconds, completely winning you the race. And the Bullet Bill cannot be stolen. The bullet is completely overpowered, but to balance it, it is also severely underpowered. The bullet stops after passing too many racers, which is around half of the racers in front of you, making it often very weak in top spots, where it may only pass 2 players before dropping you. It also will stop as soon as it can in first place, and you can try to extend it by using it on a turn, but it still often proves to be very weak. And while the bullet bill can take some shortcuts, this does not work for all shortcuts. So to maximize the benefit from using a bullet, you typically want to either use it through some kind of shortcut that you know it can take, or use it into a bullet extension zone, but also watch the minimap to make sure it's not about to pass too many players on the way there. Another great time to use the bullet is into a very chaotic section with turns and walls, where you are very likely to get hit by items, and bumping everyone on this turn is deadly for them. Because, I forgot to mention, a bullet bill will also make you lose your drift if you get bumped by it, which is usually not a big deal, but is a pretty big deal on a turn. The boo is less of a speed item and more of an invincibility item, but you still go at full speed through the off-road, so you can use a boo to take shortcuts. When you use the boo, you'll become invincible for a period of time, and you will steal an item from a random player in front of you. This will always steal from their first item slot, so you will often be able to see what your potential steals are, and make a calculated play to try and steal a great item. Of course, this also means that if you are in second place with a boo, you will always steal from first place, so you can even make a guaranteed play to win you the race. But if there's no available item in front of you, or you are in first place, you will always get a single mushroom, which is a pretty great item, especially in first. It is possible for there to be multiple boos in play at once, but the boo cannot steal another boo. And as mentioned earlier, it also cannot steal a mega mushroom, super horn, bullet bill, or boomerang. Because the boo is typically obtained in middle spots, even all the way up to third place, that means that when you are in a top spot, you always have to play around the possibility of your item getting stolen. This is especially true in first place, who gets stolen from the most. This is why you should often hold the coin item in your first slot if possible, that way the boo will not steal your defensive item. The feather is a unique item that you can get in top spots, and it's not exactly a speed item. When you use the feather, it launches you into the air. You can use it to dodge items on the ground, including red shells, or use it to take shortcuts. However, you will not land in a speed boost, so make sure you do an air trick after using the feather. Depending on the track, the feather item may be nearly useless, or it may be one of the best items you can get. For example, on Whistle Stop Summit, you can take a gap jump shortcut with the feather, and you can also use it to save yourself from failing the final rail shortcut. And then there's Bowser's Castle, where you can use it to take the turn skip shortcut at the start, or you can use it to take a lava shortcut later. The feather is great on these tracks, but on Boo Cinema? Nothing really. The most important tip for using a feather effectively is to realize that it does not send you in the direction you are facing. Rather, it sends you in the direction you are moving. So if you want to use a feather while drifting, the feather will send you sideways. So you will have to turn sharper than you think in order to take a good line through some feather shortcuts. The feather is a lot harder to use properly than it looks, because if you haven't used one before, it's going to place you in a spot that you don't expect. So feather shortcuts are something that must be practiced, and they are a lot harder than mushroom shortcuts. Dash food is a special item that you can get from a food bag instead of an item box, and it acts similarly to a mushroom. There are many different kinds of food. Each food item gives a different length of speed boost when used. And in general, the bigger the food that you get, the longer the speed boost that it will give you. Most regular tracks do not have dash food, but there are a few that do. For example, Crown City and Mario Circuit both have a food bag that can be pretty important in the race if you use it on a shortcut. However, on intermission tracks, a lot of them have dash food, and because it is a speed item, it's usually worth going for. And finally, we have coin items. These are pretty underwhelming to use, but they can be quite impactful in helping you win a race. The coin item is the most common item in first place, and when you use it, it increases your coin counter by 2. And remember, each coin that you get raises your top speed. This is a pretty good source of coins in first, and can help you grow your lead without having to go out of your way for coins on the track. Unlike Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where the coin item was utterly atrocious due to you only needing 10 coins to max out, and second place constantly pulls red shells, in Mario Kart World, the coin item is actually pretty alright. First place often has an easier time reaching 20 coins than any other placement, and you're not constantly at risk of being hit by a red shell, so it's okay to pull a coin sometimes. Now, it's important to note that in first, you cannot pull 2 coins at once. This means that you shouldn't always use your coin item right away. If there is a single item box set coming up soon, it's better to hold onto your coin item until you get the next item, which is guaranteed to not be another coin, and likely going to be a defensive item. I have to say likely because there was an update where coin block got added to first place, so you're not guaranteed to get a defense item with 2 item slots. You also want to keep your coin in the first slot as much as possible, as getting this stolen by a boo is no problem. And keep in mind that if you get hit by the blue shell, you will lose your trail item, so this is another benefit of keeping the coin in the first slot. It protects your defensive item. The coin block is an item that gives you 8 coins when you repeatedly use it, which is a huge increase at once. It also gives a small speed boost as you get these coins, and it also drops coins behind you onto the track for other racers to pick up. When you get a coin block, you should almost always just use it right away, so you get these 8 coins as early as possible, and that gives you the maximum benefit. Getting a coin block at the start of the race in first place is actually the best thing you can get, and immediately puts you far away from others unable to be drafted. In general, getting a coin block is a good thing and helps your chances in the race. It's just that you can't always see the effect of this right away. The coin shell functions just like any other shell for defensive purposes. You can hold it behind you and it blocks other items. However, if you throw it forward, it moves down the middle of the road like a blue shell or a bullet would, and it drops an enormous amount of coins. Now, unless you are actively collecting coins from a coin shell, do not stay in the middle of the road. Stay out of the middle of the road at all times because a coin shell can always hit you. Now remember, anyone can take these coins, so it will not always benefit yourself to throw the coin shell forward. But if nobody is near you, you could benefit from the coin shell immensely and immediately get up to 20 coins. If you already have a lot of coins, you can still use the coin shell offensively as it goes through other players and most items even after hitting them. But if you don't want others to benefit from the coins, then you can also throw it backwards, which just makes it move in a straight line. Alright, here is the good stuff. By this point, you know what every item does, you can confidently drive on all the tracks, and you are making decisions with your items whether to save them or chain them, and you are trying your best to prioritize taking important shortcuts to win. But sometimes, the game just feels too chaotic and out of your control. So let's talk about what strategies to use so you can have a game plan for consistent results. Remember, Mario Kart is not a random game of luck. If you have better strategy than your opponents, you can often win, even if they have faster driving. So let's talk about strategy. There are 3 general placements that you can be in a race. This is the front, the middle, and the back. Starting off with first place. Okay, technically first place is also just in the front, but playing from first place is a little bit different than playing from any other place. In first place, you have a very limited and predictable pool of items, so there is not a lot of decision making. The main thing you have to do is drive fast and don't make any mistakes. As for items, you pretty much always want to chain items, as this rapidly raises your coin count. The coin item is one of the big advantages of being in first, as you don't need to go out of your way to get more coins. Because first place items are so bad, unless you really need a defensive item, you can often skip double item boxes so that you can take a better line. Another advantage of being in first place is that you cannot get hit by anyone in front of you. And think about it like this, you will always be more protected from the back because of your trail item, so this makes first place safer. And this is especially important on rails. Whenever a rail is the fastest path on the track, you should be taking it in first to maintain your lead. You can also place trap items on the rails to stop other players from taking the fastest path, further extending your lead. When you see a blue shell coming, if you don't have an item to dodge it, you can jump off the track to dodge it and get the respawn boost. This is much faster than taking the full stun of the blue shell. Now, this is not always possible, but it is very often possible, so make sure you're thinking about this when you see a blue shell. However, if you have a super horn, you can simply use it when the blue shell is above you to break it. If you have a mushroom, you can wait for the blue shell to stop spinning above you, then use it. And of course, any other invincibility item can be used to dodge the blue shell, but you probably are not going to have other invincibility items in first. The main advantage of being in first place is that you can build a lead thanks to the coin item and by staying safe away from all the chaos. But this is not possible on all tracks. On tracks with big mushroom shortcuts, including pretty much every single intermission track, it is not possible to stay in first against good players. Now, this can be a good thing, as getting past means you won't get blue shelled. But if the shortcuts are too big, then you can consider intentionally staying out of first, as then you have a chance to get mushrooms, improving your odds of winning the race. If you are near the front, but not in first place, keep in mind the potential item distribution of the players around you, because if the pack is close behind you, you can easily get hit by boomerangs, shells coming forward. You can also get hit by super horns near you. This is a recipe for disaster. So there are two things that you can do about this. One is to get behind other players and draft from them to get away, or you can keep trying to chain your items until you get mushrooms and take shortcuts to get away. Gaining distance from the pack in any way that you can is crucial. However, there will always be players near you, and often the best play you have is to hit them before they hit you. The attack items in this game are powerful, and you often cannot even know what item other players have. So you can use offense as the best defense. Get them away from you, and you can guarantee they're not going to hit you. But if you think you'll lose the battle because you cannot beat their item, then just slow down and respect their space. Yes, it's okay to not always hold A in Mario Kart. Mushrooms are quite common to get near the front, so if you have a mushroom, you'll want to hold it until you can use it strategically. Some tracks have a big shortcut that you definitely want to save your mushroom for, even if you have to take a hit along the way without re-accelerating. But some tracks don't have a clear best mushroom spot, so you can just save it to get away from attack items, or to recover after getting hit, or even chain it into the next item set if you don't need it. The main goal when playing from the front is to gain space from other players near you. This keeps you safe from most items, and this can either be accomplished by being fast or hitting other players before they hit you. However, you typically don't want to hit the player in first place. First place is your protection against the blue shell, so be peaceful to them as long as they are peaceful back to you. However, if first place plays aggressively and tries to hit you, then it is justified to take them out, as they are a bigger threat to you than the potential blue shell. And this is especially true if you can carry blue shell protection into first place, as this gives you all the benefits of first place, but without worrying about the blue shell. If you are in the middle, also known as the pack is usually very dense. Most of the players are around here, and they are frequently pulling items that are completely unavoidable. There are boomerangs, fire flowers, triple shells, and stars flying around. Even the best players in the world cannot dodge all of this. This is generally a horrible spot to be in, and you should avoid being in the pack unless you see a way out. Now, at the start of the race, being in the pack is mostly fine, as everyone will have triple mushrooms, but this is because the item distribution at the start of the race is different, and you need to find your way out of here before the item distribution changes and all the attack items start to show up. For example, if you have a decent number of coins and you have triple mushrooms, you can try to stay away from other players for long enough to take the next big shortcut. Or if there is no shortcut, just speed up away from the chaos and hope you get a good item after this. But let's say you're not so fortunate. If you have very few coins and you pull 2 attack items, this will not help you escape the pack. You could continue to stay in the pack and hope for a good item soon and hope nobody hits you, but remember, you have a limited amount of time before the race ends. The timer and the odds are against you here, so in this situation, you often want to intentionally slow down and play from the back instead. So your main goal while playing in the pack is to just get out of there. Ideally, you get out of it moving forward, and then you get to play from the front where it is safer. But if you don't have that option, then get out of the pack moving backwards and play from the back. Never stay in the pack for too long because you cannot dodge everything. Eventually, something will hit you. And if you're going to end up in the back anyway, you'd rather that happen early so you have time to plan a comeback. Going forward as fast as you can may just sound like the typical way you should play Mario Kart, but to pros, this is a strategy called running. However, if you do the opposite by being in the back, then this is a strategy called bagging. This is short for sandbagging, meaning to intentionally race poorly for a period of time. Of course, not everyone in the back chose to be there intentionally, so not everyone is technically sandbagging, but bagging is just the shorthand name for playing from the back. While bagging, the driving skill required is easier, but the decisions you have to make are more complex. There are several different strategies that you can use from here, and it all depends on what items you get, where the other players are, and which track you are playing on, because different tracks have different shortcut locations and different amounts of comeback potential. For now, I will not give you a full rundown of all your options, because that would take a long time, and I'll save it for the pro guide coming out soon. But here are a few examples of what you can do to successfully win a race by bagging. On a track with only one big mushroom shortcut, you can try to get triple mushrooms in your first slot and a shock dodge item in your second slot. This allows you to take one mushroom shortcut per lap, which would put you in a middle or top spot, with one chance to be invincible on lap 3 to make it to the front. If you get a shock dodge, even better. You just win with 2 items only. On a track with lots of big shortcuts, you can stay far in the back and just focus on collecting coins and chaining items so you don't end up too far behind. Near the end of the race, if you're lucky, you may have 2 shock dodge items, which gives you a seriously high chance to dodge the shock. Or you may end up behind the shock, which is also a dodge, or you may pull the shock yourself, and where should you use it? Of course, chained into the item set before a big shortcut. And another option is on any track, if the pack is pretty close in front of you, like you're not too far away from first place, you can just spam all your speed items into shortcuts, or even not into shortcuts, just be fast on the road and put yourself in the front. From there, you're safe from the chaotic pack. Of course, there is a lot more you could do than just that. The variety of track layouts, item box placements, positions of other racers, and which 2 items you get and in what order, and whether or not a shock has already occurred, these all affect the viability of any given bagging strategy. So you can probably see why bagging is such a difficult strategy to make work consistently. It might look easy when a pro player does it and just uses 2 items to pass the entire lobby, but really ask yourself if you would have made all the same decisions. And if your answer is a 100% honest yes, then you are a pro player. Go online and win a bunch of races easily. It will feel really good to take down pro players who claim this game is skill-based when really you can just beat them without trying. And the best part is, you'll be the first person who has ever been able to do this without first having years of practice. So I can't wait to see you destroy us on the racecourse. It will be history in the making. No, but seriously, I'm sure you can tell that years of people saying bagging is lame and cheap has completely gotten under my skin. So really, the complainers have won. But remember, bagging is a crucial skill in Mario Kart, because you will often find yourself in the back just because you got unlucky. And if you cannot fight your way back to the front, then you will lose. It's as simple as that. And if you want to see some high-level gameplay and decision-making that, of course, includes both running and bagging, then you can subscribe to Shortcat for amazing videos. I recently hit 9,300 VR in online worldwides, and I'm still going up. The best way to improve at Mario Kart World is to play online. This is where you'll find the best players, and pushing yourself to perform consistently well in a challenging environment is the only way that you're going to improve a lot. You might tell yourself that you can just practice in time trials and then practice against your friends and the bots, but let me tell you right now, that doesn't work. You will never truly be that great unless you play online. And as of right now, there are 4 main ways that you can race online. After going online, if you choose the race mode, this is also known as online worldwides. You will get a rating number, also called VR or versus rating. This starts at 3,000 and it can go up to the upper 9,000. I mean, technically it can go higher than that, but almost nobody has gotten there. Much like ELO, your rating goes up or down depending on how well you performed relative to the rating of your opponents in that race. Eventually, it settles on a number that represents your skill level, and honestly, is quite accurate. One important thing about online worldwides is that the track selection is weighted towards intermission tracks. About half of the time, you will get 1 regular track you can select and 2 intermission tracks. and the other half of the time you can select between 3 intermission tracks. Even selecting random does not get you out of this, as random will usually give you one of the already selectable options and occasionally give you a random regular track. The second way you can play online is Knockout Tour. Just like Worldwides, you have a rating number, and once a room gathers, a random rally out of the 8 rallies gets chosen. If you get eliminated, you have the option to leave early and find another lobby so you can start playing immediately. The third way you can play is by creating or joining a friend room. Of course, you can invite your actual friends, but given that you're watching this guide so you can destroy them at Mario Kart, you're not going to have friends for much longer. So, because all you need is the room code to join a friend room, there are places where you can find public room codes to join. The best place to go, as of making this video, is the Mario Kart World Discord server, which always has active rooms playing that you can easily find and join. You don't need to talk to anybody, it's free to join, you just need to type in the room code and hope the room is not full. A link to join this Discord server is in the description. Now, compared to Worldwides, friend rooms have 2 main differences. You score points after each race instead of having a rating, and you can select any track to play on. During the track selection, simply press the plus button to select any track or any intermission to play. But make sure you respect the rules of the room you have joined. As you can probably imagine, a lot of players are only playing in friend rooms so they can play the regular tracks instead of the intermission tracks. The fourth way to play Mario Kart World online is a way you have probably seen me play before. This is competitive Mario Kart World. If you want to become the best player you can be, then you have to join competitive races, or you will never truly be tested by highly skilled players in a higher pressure environment where every race counts. Now, I don't recommend everyone joins competitive right away, because as much as I'd love for the competitive population to grow, I have to honestly warn you that if you're new to Mario Kart, or you think you're pretty good because you can beat your friends, the truth is that the players here are going to be way better than you can even imagine. Competitive Mario Kart uses its own rating system that is separate from online Worldwides called MMR, or Matchmaking Rating. And in the description, I'll put a resource on how to join competitive Mario Kart. Once you've signed up and read all the rules, all you have to do is go into the Discord server for competitive Mario Kart and find the 12-player queue or 24-player queue channel, whichever one you would prefer to play in. Type /C and you will be signed up to join the match that begins at the next hour. Then every player who signed up is grouped according to their MMR, and each room plays 12 races. Depending on how well you scored in those 12 races, your MMR will go up or go down. At the time of making this video, my MMR is around 7,600, which puts me in the top 400 players in the world. But the best player in the world has almost double my rating at 14,000. Why don't you get a life? Mario Kart is a game with an extremely high skill ceiling, and playing competitive is going to be frustrating at first, I guarantee it. When I first got into competitive Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I was already really good, and I was a solid mid-3000 MMR player. It took me months to refine my game and make big improvements as I struggled my way up to a high 6000 MMR by the end. When playing against competitive players, it's going to feel like you're just getting unlucky, when in reality, you have to face the hard truth that there are just a lot of players better than you. But if you try very hard, you can improve, and one day you can beat them. When you play online, there are going to be differences compared to playing offline that you always have to keep in mind. Because of connection delay, online play is always going to have some issues. Whenever you trail an item online, or if you have revolving items like triple bananas, these are susceptible to lag. If someone else runs into your trail item, but then just keeps moving forward, they're not hacking. This is called a lag trail. Because of the connection delay, the game predicts approximately where each other player is located, and sometimes it predicts that they have run into your item, even if they have not actually done that. So in order to hit the other player, they actually have to get hit on their own screen. Now, while this sounds frustrating and unfair because you really can just randomly lose your items and it's not your fault, just know that this lag trail system is light years better than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. In Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, if you ran into the item on your opponent's screen, it counts as a hit. So you would literally constantly get hit by nothing. And so now, you sometimes lose your trail item for no reason, which sucks, but at least you're not getting hit by nothing. Hey, another reason to hold your coin in the first slot. But you can use this knowledge to your advantage. If you have triple items and box somebody into a corner, you can often hit them on their screen without actually using one of your own protection items. And this also can just work out in your favor for no reason. Someone could hit you on their screen before you get hit on your own screen, and this makes their item disappear. Another weird thing that happens because of lag trails is a phenomenon called phantom items. Sometimes a player appears to have lost their trail item on your screen, but then they just throw the item again anyway. This is because they never lost the item on their own screen, so of course they can still use it. But you couldn't see it, so this is a phantom item. I'm not going to go too hard on criticizing the game design here, because believe me, I've been yelling at Nintendo for years about what an ideal, practical system for this would be, and this is not it. Like, there is a solution, they just are not doing it. But anyway, this is why paying attention to the items near you is always important, because sometimes they disappear, and you have to know that there was one there. The only way you can know for sure that a phantom item is not there anymore is if the player throws that item away, or you can see them trailing a different item. Now, this game has a really funny thing about rails online, where the game knows approximately where the other player is, but for some reason, it cannot tell you for sure that this player is on the rail, even if they're moving like they definitely are on a rail. Now, this can sometimes work to your advantage, since you could be right next to somebody and not get bumped off because they're lagging, but it is still your responsibility to anticipate what your opponents are probably doing, and play as if the other player is there on the rail. Because even if you don't see them, they can teleport back to their real position at any moment, which could cause you to get hit or get bumped off. So while this behavior is pretty silly, anytime it messes you up, you have to admit that you could have seen this coming. And one more way that the game tends to lag is when you hit snipes on other players. Again, the game is trying to predict their position, but there is always a delay between when something happens on your screen and their screen. So by the time their screen shows them the green shell, they are already in a different spot. But there is a very easy way to counter this, and that is to always try to hit the spot in front of where the other player is. Even if you miss on your screen, this is a very reliable way to guarantee a hit on their screen. While these differences due to online lag can be frustrating at first, ultimately you have to understand that this is just how the game is. And if the lag is truly so bad that you don't even care to improve at this game because it's stupid, then stop playing. And this is actually what people did in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because constantly getting hit by nothing is so infuriating. But honestly, Mario Kart World's lag issues are almost nothing in comparison. It will feel silly at first when you get griefed by lag, but I promise you that this level of positional lag is something that you can get used to, and it almost never actually affects the outcome of a race. Is the netcode perfect? No, it could be a lot better, but it's almost always going to be good enough. And hey, at least it's not like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, where even your controller inputs are lagging and the game randomly stutters and stops. I cannot believe Nintendo released that game in this condition, and it's still like this. While it may not seem like it at first, dealing with luck and understanding luck is fundamental to your improvement at Mario Kart. Because if you crash out about bad luck, or you feel like you have no control because some things in this game are random, you will actually just not improve. The more skilled player will always win in Mario Kart on average. There is way too much driving skill and item planning required, to the point where when I watch an average Mario Kart player play, I'm not kidding, I literally tried this and I took notes, I would usually do at least one thing differently every single second. I would do over 100 things differently every single race, and this is why when I race online against players below my skill level, even against players in the high 8,000 VR range, these are good players, I finish in first place a lot. But even if I'm not finishing in first, I almost always finish in the top 6. And I know this because if I don't do that even one time, my rating just plummets. And this is not to mention playing against slightly more casual players, where I have finished a 4-race session with a perfect score of 60 several times. I even made an entire video where I said I'd stop as soon as I lost one of these, and I went over 2 hours in real time where I scored the most points every single time. And even when I finally lost, and look, I lost by a lot, this included a race where I made all the right plays and just had a terrible luck moment right at the end that cost me big time. If this shock had not occurred, I would have actually won again. So the reason I'm winning is because I understand the game well, and I set myself up in situations where I have a high probability to win. Now, that doesn't mean I always win, but the nature of probability means that I will often win if I do this, and I will win on average. Now look, I'm not saying this to brag, because according to my ranking, there are over 300 other players in the world who could have done the same thing, but even better. No, I'm saying this because there is a common misconception that just because a game has a core element of chance, that this means the entire game is based on luck. This is not true. Almost every competitive card game and board game and many competitive video games have some core element of chance, but that doesn't stop the best players in the world from consistently winning. In fact, having luck play a role in the game simply raises the skill ceiling, because there are effectively an infinite amount of situations that you must be prepared for, an infinite amount of problems you must be able to solve quickly. But of course, this doesn't change the fact that sometimes the reason why you lost is really just bad luck. I mean, if it's happening every single race, you're probably doing something wrong. Maybe you're just not driving as fast as your competitors, so they pass you and they hit you on the way. This is actually really common, where playing against stronger players than yourself actually just feels like bad luck, when in reality, they're just better than you. This actually happened to me in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and no, I did not realize that at the time. I really thought it was just the worst luck I've ever had. Mario Kart is a very stressful game. In fact, it has been measured to be one of the most stressful games in existence. It is normal to get heated and get tilted because of bad luck, so sometimes you just need to take a break and come back with a cool head later to think about what you could have done better, because there's always something you could have done better. But you won't have all the answers, so it's also important to watch high-level gameplay to see what pros do differently than you. This is something I still do all the time as I refine my strategies, and I always make an effort in my own videos to analyze my gameplay and tell you what I did poorly and what I did well, so you can take that advice into your own races. I can make a beginner guide, a pro guide, a guide for every single track, but ultimately, because Mario Kart has so much creativity and brand new unique situations, it is impossible to cover all of that in an organized way. And so watching high-level players play and explain their decision-making is very important for you to be able to build the intuition on how you can improve your own races. Bad luck streaks can happen, and they will happen. But good luck streaks happen too. Just because a bad luck streak happened, that does not mean this game is impossible. Keep improving, and I promise you, you will see results. So that's the end of the beginner guide. If you practice everything in this guide and memorize the 30 track layouts, or more if there's DLC at some point, you will become an excellent Mario Kart World player. Next up is the Pro Guide. We will be talking about a lot more specific techniques for both your driving and items decisions, such as alternate paths for each track, boosted charge jumps, boosted tricks, how to become more consistent at shortcuts, predicting and managing your items, reading the minimap, predicting the shock, specific powerful item plays, and even more that I probably don't even know about right now, because hopefully by then, even more cool techniques will be discovered in this game. Mario Kart World is still new, and this is the best opportunity to try and improve. Who knows, maybe eventually you will be able to compete against the best players in the world. The Pro Guide is coming and will be linked in the description once I make it. Good luck out there, and I hope to see you on the racecourse.